Hi, this is Analytics, and welcome to another lesson. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts or questions in the comments. Let's get started. In this video, I'm going to use one of these two files. They have the same content, only the first one is a CSV file and the second one is an Excel file, so you can choose the one you see fit. But there's a little detail. I'm going to import it both in Power Query from Excel and Power Query from Power BI. I'm going to choose one of them. You can choose either one, but you have to open the same file both in Power Query from Excel and from Power BI. And the goal here is to help you see the little differences between Power Query and Excel and Power Query and Power BI. There are tiny differences, and I believe that is important for you to understand. So I'm going to use the second one for this class. I will just randomly pick the second one. I'm going to start a blank Excel file, and I'm importing that file. Okay, there you go. And you can see that there's a lot of problems. My data is totally messy, and that's the point. We are going to fix all that. I'm going to click transform data. Okay, now I have Power Query and Excel, and I'm going to open the same file in Power BI. Let me open a blank Power BI workspace. There you go. Now I have the same file in Power BI. I will click transform data. Oh, okay, now I have two instances of Power Query. I have Power Query and Power BI and Power Query and Excel. So I have Power Query editor right here and Power Query editor here on top. How can you know which one is Excel, which one is Power BI? There's a little icon on top, on the top left corner, and then you can see this is Power Query and Excel, and this is Power Query and Power BI. To help us know which is which, I'm going to call this table in Power BI, I'm going to call it PBI, Power BI, and in Excel, I'm going to call it Excel. Okay, now it's easier to identify. So first off, let's start doing some data cleaning, and at the same time, we're going to see some of the differences between Power Query in each of the platforms. And here in Power BI, what I'm going to do, let me remove, well, the data I'm using, you can see that the first 1, 2, 3, 4 rows don't really have any relevant data to me. And these two cells here, they are not very useful, so I want to remove the first 4 rows. So to do that, I'm going to use remove rows. And in Power BI, I just have to click the down arrow and select remove top rows. But how many rows on top I want to remove? I want to remove 4 of the top rows. So I'm going to select 4, okay. And then now my column headers, they are in this first row, and as we saw in previous videos, we can pull this row up so it will become our column headers. And to do that, all I have to do is select transform, the transform tab, and on the top ribbon, I can select use first rows as headers. And there you go. Now my headers, my first row became the headers, my column headers. This name right here is a little weird, but we can take care of it later. So let's do the same in Excel. So in Excel, you'll see that the data is behaving differently because look, my first row was actually recognized as a column header, but I only had data. Let me go back to Power BI. If I check the previous versions, you will see that this first row was recognized as a column header in Power Query from Excel, and this first row became the column header. So now I actually don't have to remove the first 4 rows. I have to remove the top 3 rows. And you can also see that the buttons are not in the same location, because remove rows, I can remove the top rows. Now I'm going to remove 3 top rows. Okay, now let's make the first row as column headers, and I can do it using the transform tab and then using first row, use first row as headers. Okay, notice that we have a huge button right here to use first rows as headers, But the same button appears here on the Home tab and right here. Look, use first row as headers. It's the very same button. In the Home tab, only it's smaller than in the Transform tab. So it's the very same button. This is in Excel and Power BI. Same thing. In the Transform tab, we have a huge button here. And in the Home tab, it is right here. So you can see the same buttons are not on the same place in Power Query and Power BI. They have the same buttons, the same functionalities, but they are not necessarily on the same spot. Use first row as headers. You see it's further right, and in Excel, it's in the middle. So it's the same function, only on a different spot. Also, this little panel here, keep rows or remove rows in Excel, they are a little more left than in Power Query, but it's the same very option. New source, recent sources, you see this little panel, you can see that the top ribbon, it's split into smaller panels, smaller divisions, and this one in Power BI, it's right here on the other side, but it's the same thing. Data source settings in Excel, it's on the right and it's on the left in Power BI, but it's the same thing. Here in Power BI, you have the close and apply button. There is no close and apply button in Excel, but you have the close and load. It's pretty much the same, but as we saw in one of the first videos of this course, as we saw, one of the platforms that work attached to Excel is Power Pivot. And Power Pivot is a separate platform. It works in close coordination with Excel, but in Excel, it's a specific platform with its own window. When you work in Power BI, Power Pivot is already embedded into Power BI, so you don't have to close a separate window as you do with Power Query when you're working in Power BI. So close and load has to do with Power Pivot in Excel, and close and apply has to do with moving your data over into Power Query and Power BI. So it's kind of the same thing, the same operation, only here in Power Query from Power BI, you are moving your data over to the Power BI environment. And in Excel, you are moving your data over to Excel, to an Excel table, or to a Power Pivot data model. We are going to understand and to work specifically with data models in Excel and in Power Pivot in another course. But the idea is similar to what we do in Power BI. So subscribe to our channel so you can get notified of the new lessons. Another small difference is, for example, here in Excel, if you click this button right here, Properties, these are the properties of your current query, of the table you are currently working on. For example, I could change the name of this query, as we have seen in previous videos. I can change the name right here on this panel on the right-hand side, new name, enter, or we can change the name double-clicking right here on the panel on the left-hand side, new name 2, or we can change the name, click on properties, and right here I can rename the same query and call it again Excel query, for example. And I can have a description of the table as I see fit. Okay, and then you have this little option right here, fast data load. When you're working with large data sets with, say, hundreds of thousands or millions of rows, you can click this little checkbox to make sure Power Query will be faster in loading your data from the original source. Only while you are loading your data, Excel is not going to work. It's going to freeze until your data is fully uploaded. This is up to you. I'm not going to show an example. I'll leave it for you to run your own test. Actually, I don't even have a data set with millions of rows at this moment. This is a homework for you. But look, in Power BI, we have slightly different options. Let me do the same in Power BI, in Power Query from Power BI. Okay, I have the same. It's only a little further right, but it's the same thing. I can rename Power BI data set, for example, and I can write my description, and only instead of one checkbox right here, I have two checkboxes, and the choices are different from the one I have in Excel. I can enable load to report or include in report refresh. What does it mean? Well, if I click OK, the changes are going to be in effect. Now the table name has changed as expected, but the same two choices that I have here, enable load to report and include in report refresh, are the same choices that I have if I right click on the name of the table. So I have enable load, include in report refresh. So it's the same thing, same options. And include in report refresh, you can choose it if you want or not your table to be refreshed when your entire model is refreshed. For example, imagine you're working with accounting data and you have a chart of accounts that only changes once a year. So you don't have to reload your chart of accounts every time you are reloading and refreshing the data of your whole data model. So the fact tables, all the other tables may be changing every day. You may be entering new data every day, and then you have to refresh your data, and your data model maybe once a day or twice a day or once a week. So maybe you have to refresh that data every day, but you don't have to refresh your chart of accounts every day. When you refresh your entire data model, you don't need to refresh specifically that table. So you can just turn off the refresh on that specific table. So in this example, imagine you have 10 different tables right here, and among these 10 different tables, 4 of them are like charts of accounts or some kind of table that you don't need to refresh really often. All you have to do is just disable this choice, include in report refresh. So when you're refreshing your data, you are only going to refresh the tables that you really need to refresh because they are receiving new data. The other ones, as you're not receiving new data very often, you don't need to refresh them very often. So you can just turn off this refresh process. Of course, the day you need to refresh it, you have to remember to re-enable it. And enable load, this is for choosing the tables that you want to load to Power BI. For example, I will keep this enabled, and I'm going to close and apply, and the table is going to be loaded into Power BI. And here is my table. The table I just loaded in Power BI. Of course, I haven't cleaned the data yet, but the table is here. But what if instead of keeping enabled the enable load option, what if I disabled it? I'm just clicking it and okay, continue. And you can see that now my table name changed. So the font now is italic, and you can see that now it's not being loaded anymore. So if I right click, you'll see that the enable load is disabled. And if I close and apply, you will see that I have no table loaded in Power BI because I disabled the load for this specific table. In this case, of course, I only have one table, but say you had many tables, you can choose the ones you want to load in Power BI and the ones you don't. And you may be asking, how can it make sense? And actually, it does make sense. Sometimes you have a complex data model and you have helper queries or helper tables that are only used as intermediate steps for calculated stuff, and you don't really need those in Power BI. You only need the final tables that were calculated using these helper tables. So you will load the ones you need, and the helper tables, they are just intermediate steps. You don't need to load those. So these two buttons right here, enable load and include in report refresh, they work just the way I told you. And of course, if the enable load is disabled, of course, you cannot enable include and report refresh. So before you can enable include and report refresh, you have to enable the first choice, enable load. Now I can enable the second one. And this configuration is going to be loaded in Power BI, and every time I refresh my data model, this table will be refreshed too. Okay, what else could I show? For example, merge and append. Merge queries and append queries, we'll see this in detail over the next lessons, but you can see that in Power BI, they are further right. In Excel, they are further left, close to the center. So pretty much, I would say 98%, 95% of Power Query is the same in Excel and in Power BI. In this video, I just wanted to show you that there are a few functionalities, a few resources that are different because they may make sense in Excel, only in Excel, or only in Power BI. So most of the resources make sense in both, but the ones that don't make sense in both, they will be slightly different. And a few of the buttons could be displays, could be on different spots on Power BI or Excel, but the buttons are the same and the resources are the same. So just be aware of that. In the next video, we're going to start working with data cleaning, and we are going to see most of the buttons. I will pick one of them, either Power BI or Power Query to work. We don't have to be bouncing back and forth, and then we'll choose one and start working data cleaning in one of them. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe, share it with your friends, leave a comment below, help us reach more people. See you in the next video.